Hi everybody, this is Dan Stolbarger. Welcome to this week's Middle East Update. It's the week of August 7th. And just as a reminder, make sure you go to our website at holygroundexplorations.com in order to access the PDF PowerPoint that accompanies this presentation. You know, this last Wednesday marks the, I guess you'd say, anniversary or the memorial of when Anne Frank was captured from her hiding place in Holland and taken to the Nazi concentration camp of Auschwitz-Birkenau. And it's just a reminder, you know, I stumbled across a very moving presentation of Anne Frank on Netflix called Anne Frank Parallel Stories. Highly recommended to you. This week, it's good to reflect. If you have teenagers, what a great opportunity to give them an insight of what took place not that long ago. And so again, Netflix, Parallel Views and Parallel Stories, and Frank. With the rise of anti-Semitism today, we'd like to think this could never happen again, but, well, our news bites for this week. Interesting that the U.S. chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark Milley, made an unannounced visit to Israel, of all places, meeting with Defense Minister Benny Gantz, Mossad Director Yossi Cohen, and the question is, whoa, cloak and dagger, why all this? And then especially with the backdrop that we have with Iran and what's just taken place in Syria, the Golan, Lebanon. Interesting timing. Well, again, this is our news bites. The PLO, the Fatah, in their website, on their website, we extracted this comment that basically said the PLO and Fatah are planning a violent, keyword there, comprehensive intifada. So again, let's start stacking these things up. We've got Fatah, we've got the PLO, we've got Hamas, we've got Hezbollah, we've got the Iranians. All of them have one thing in common. What's that? Their hatred of Israel. Again, we're thankful that the God of Israel, we know he never slumbers or sleeps, and we know that he holds Israel in the palm of his hands. Now, by now, everybody's very aware of the catastrophe that took place in Beirut. Lebanese officials or authorities have said that there was 2,750 tons of ammonia nitrate that ignited in a warehouse in Beirut's port. You've probably seen the videos of the enormous explosion. It's killed over 135 people, injured over 5,000, displacing over 300,000 people whose homes were rendered unlivable by the blast and the ensuing shockwave. The question obviously is going to be, how did this happen? How come there was so much of this explosive materials in the heart of the city? And so as things begin to unravel or unwind, as mentioned, this warehouse was storing explosive material, ammonia nitrate, illegally, without proper security. And as I mentioned, who owned it? Who did it belong to? Well, it's well known that Hezbollah has tens or even hundreds of storehouses throughout Lebanon. Again, ideally, they like to keep it in neighborhoods, in mosques, and schools, knowing that Israel will not bomb those particular areas. And so the question's going to be what's going to transpire, because everyone knows this was Hezbollah's materials used to fuel and their expansive missile arsenals. And so with it all blowing up and with what's transpired, will the Lebanese people kind of turn on Hezbollah? What will Hezbollah do? Will they try to, in a sense, do that, let's try to blame someone else or whatever? Everybody's agreed that Israel was not behind this explosion, but not so quick. There will be a coming, I guess I would say Hezbollah is going to take out their frustrations in their current situation out on Israel. And it's sort of the deflection process. Don't look at me, look at them. It's really their fault, etc., etc. So we kind of have to fasten our seatbelts at this time and figure out what in the world is happening. Well, we have this whole possibility of a Middle East war brewing at this time, regardless if the mega blast in Beirut was simply a bad accident or again attributed to Hezbollah. The chaos that's resulting from this in Lebanon is going to be what's going to spin Hezbollah out of control. And because of their anger, these coming days will be tense in Israel. Golan. And then we're going to talk about the different things that's taken place in Israel this week. Let's see if we can count them. Golan strikes. Okay, you've probably seen the videos of this, but the IDF foiled an attempt of 4 individuals to place improvised explosive devices along the border between Syria and Israel. The incident was reported on Monday, and the IDF troops on the southern Golan Heights, adjacent to the IDF post, spotted this terror squad placing these explosives next to the security fences. And the IDF troops, the IDF aircraft, they fired on the terrorists. A hit was identified. There were no IDF injuries, but there are 4 terrorists that are now on this planet no longer. Okay, well, because of that, again, Hezbollah, it's sort of tit for tat. And so there is an expected retaliation or whatever. But what happens next is that Israel strikes Syria. So with the tensions that were kind of the boiling point along Israel's northern border, on Monday, the IDF conducted airstrikes in southern Syria. We've been there. All of you that have been to Israel with us and you've taken the Jeep tour from Miram Golan up into the northern or the eastern border of the Golan overlooking Syria. This is the area that we're talking about. And this bombing that took place took out a Syrian observation post, anti-aircraft artillery facilities, a command and control intelligence gathering system. A total of 15 fighters were reportedly killed. That would be both Hezbollah, Syrian, and Iranian. Okay, so we've got the strike on the Golan. We have the strike inside of Syria. What else has taken place? Well, we had a Gaza strike again last week. There was a rocket that was launched from Gaza into Israel. And as you know, the retaliation comes quickly. IDF fighters targeted Hamas sites in the area that this rocket came from. They took out a concrete manufacturing site that was used primarily for underground infrastructure constructions, the terror tunnels. And so are you tracking with me? We've got the Golan, we've got Syria, we have this mess in Beirut up north, and the Hezbollah, and now we have Gaza as well. So that's the background. That's the background of what's taken place just in a week. And so, as we mentioned before, the sabers are rattling and tensions are brewing, and we just have to wait to see what's going to happen next. On a positive note before we close, COVID vaccine from Israel, quote, there is an excellent vaccine. We start after the holidays with safety experiments. We have the product in our hands. This is coming from the Israel Institute for Biological Resources. Minister of Defense Benny Gantz visited this. Their words, not mine. We have the vaccine. Experiments on humans will begin after the High Holy Days, Rosh Hashanah, right? Feast of Trumpets, you know that. That's somewhere around October. So Israel is claiming to have a vaccine in hand. ISIS regrouping. I'm running out of time here, so I'm going to point you to the rest of the PDF. I told you, holygroundexplorations.com, but we're going to see that ISIS is regrouping. There's an article on that, as well as a new squad member coming into power, Cori Bush from Missouri, an BDS proponent. And so once again, obviously a Democrat, but once again, we're dealing with the rise of a militant BDS, anti-Israel Congress, and at least from the left side. So that's our report for this week. God bless you, and shalom.